Hey everybody, I just wanted to do one more little video, sort of an abridgment to the whole like lens dirt glows type spiel. And I found after watching this movie, it's called Hitchhikers Guide to the Galaxy. It is currently, as of this date, free on YouTube to watch. So you can actually watch this at a higher resolution, obviously. But I just took a piece from YouTube to try to show you some of the cool little things in this scene. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can kind of break down visibly and see in certain scenes on this movie. So there's this spaceship in space, but one thing I noticed was all the anamorphic lens flares in it. So we're gonna kind of push through this and just show you how we can sort of emulate some of this inside of Nuke in the demo that I did for the live stream. If you haven't been checking out the live streams, folks, there has been live streams. They're just not posting in the regular video, so you have to go onto the live tab. So let me go ahead and just play this through, and I'm going to use the dot, period button on YouTube if you guys didn't know. So you can see if you use comma and period, you can kind of move through YouTube here. So you can start to see all these little glints and glows, but one of the things you'll really start to notice is just little tiny nuances of dirt on the lens that when light hits it. Now this is probably a lens flare. Obviously, you can see the two little dots over here. You can see this. This almost looks like a black magic anamorphic lens flare. The way that black magic doesn't, the way it registers very bright blues is always a mess. I'm not sure what it is, but you can even start to see as the scene gets brighter here, from this flare. If you kind of look at this as sort of like an ellipse or something around here, the dirt that's on the lens, it's right here, here. It's so subtle, but it is there. You guys see that? Like this looks like a lens flare because it's moving, and you'll know what's basically like a glow dirt, I call it, because it kind of sits still, whereas a lens flare will change. It'll angle differently as the camera rotates around and so forth. So it's kind of cool how they kind of added this. Again, these guys were on a green screen. This glass here didn't have any lens flares. They probably did a lot of this in compositing and added a lot of these lens flares in post, obviously, because you don't really render lens flares in a composite or a 3D package. It's very rare. You usually composite those. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and kind of play this through. So again, you can see like we've got like how many lens flares here? Like 1, 2, and then all of these you can see they're probably built upon the same like the anamorphic flare, which is like this blue artifact. So you got one here and you got one here. There's obviously two planets, and then just a crap load of lens flare additions. This might have been done, I don't know, by Video Copilot, maybe not. We're also going to investigate into another flare system that was brought up in the podcast that a lot of people like. It's more scientifically accurate or so forth, I heard. So again, you can see, I don't see any dirt on that area, so I kind of keep moving forward here. But even in these shots, this is how you could start to tell that these crazy intense glows are sort of artificial, is because although they're slightly blowing out, but they're not completely blowing out the top of her head. Like if something was that bright facing towards camera, so obviously they shot this on a green screen, the background had this, then they added a flare, and they're trying to light wrap her head into this. But honestly, if she was behind something that bright, this would be blindingly bright, like probably even more to her head is disappearing, which might not be aesthetically appeasing as far as the frame. You could also see the little bit of God rays here. You guys see that? That is not in the actual scene. So you can see the edge of her head here sort of move through and so forth. And you got these gigantic, anamorphic flares which go back and forth. I highly recommend you get into anamorphics if you're, and again, I don't want you to become a filmmaker, person who just collects gear for the sake of it. I like collecting gear so that, to learn from how these lenses work, how they react with, say, diopters if they're anamorphic, how the lens flares look. There's all types of things you can use. You can even use footage that you shot to incorporate into, for the dirt or grime that we're going to talk about here. Here's I wouldn't doubt maybe that this was Adrian Poyo's, chroma AP here. A little exaggerated, obviously, red and green. You can see the chromatic aberration here. Again, some cool effects and so forth. But even like simple shots like this, like, we have that nice little reflection there. in the glass that was obviously kept from the green screen. Let's go ahead and just keep moving forward here. So I love some of these shots, and I love the way they animated this scene, especially this nice scene where the computer, initiates, the descend into the planet. But I love all these little flares and so forth. Again, these flares right here, you could see I would have them probably blown out a little bit more around his head because it's just so muted there. And again, we are not looking at this like an HDR or anything, so sometimes that can kind of get dulled down in the process of bringing it down to that range. So go ahead and just move along here. So I wanted to get into the part in this where we can start to see a little bit of the dirt, the glow dirt workflow that I showed in the live stream. So we'll go ahead and just kind of move forward here. And there we go. So here's more. And again, you guys see that God rays thing? It almost looks like somebody did a bad roto job right here. You guys see that? With the fingers? Like there's a roto imprint right there. See that? These two frames? And then, it's like somebody had a roto that was offset by a frame or something. Or, I don't know. It doesn't look like it's obviously not a shadow that's going onto the glass. It'd be kind of strange. But you can see that little bit. These are such subtleties that I want you guys to pay attention to, because these are the things that you'll be required to do. And that's what sort of like the glow, the dirt glow, technique is something that's so subtle it's barely even there. So here you're just animating lens flares on and off as we sort of move across, and you get a little bit of that God ray thing going, but very blindingly bright. And here's an example where you could start to see a little bit of that static sort of, and you should try for dynamic dirt if you can, but here you have like static dirt. Here you have a flare over to the right-hand side, which is very indicative of like anamorphic lens. I mean, this happens in spherical too, but you could just start to see those, biased on one side here, commonly, dynamic-based movement of the lens source. But do you guys see the dirt that shows up right at the bottom right? It's usually, I notice in this scene, a lot of the dirt's sort of just, it might be at the bottom left too, we can't see it, but anytime a bright object comes around, you get the exposure of some sort of dirt or something. It's not the flare itself, it's actually just dirt kind of illuminating, but it's so subtle it's barely there. And again, we're looking at this at 1080p, so I apologize, I couldn't find a higher resolution. And here you have just a slight glow kind of coming in. This is a great example of kind of experimenting with glows, almost really excellent reference for things like this. So you can see as we kind of, you don't see too much dirt as it comes around. And again, a lot of these, you can see all these anamorphic lens flares down here. So again, there's two suns on this planet. So you've got the flare from up here, and then, so you got the rainbows, and you got like this intensity change here. This is a good study if you guys are doing any sort of like atmospheric. Some would say it's over the top, as far as the amount of flares. I really dig this scene. I don't know why, but anyway, it is a bit of a cartoony series and so forth. This is one of the things I always like to bring up, is when you have these really nice glows that are right here, kind of this little hot spot. I kind of really dig those. And then again, you have this. This is the flare of the reflection of whatever it is that's hitting this, right? So this is coming from the reflection of this, which is giving a flare, which is, if you guys already don't know, a flare is basically the overexposure of the lens, of the light coming through to lens to capture on the sensor. And actually, I just realized now that, so the flare, I'm sorry, is not coming from the reflection. It's coming from off camera here. You can see it's getting keyed off as we move away from whatever it is, the sun or whatever. So I'm sorry, the flare is not coming from there. You can see the timing of this flare turning off is like what it is. So then again, this just goes down. Still very heavy amounts of glow here that you can't really kind of put your finger on. I'll go ahead and play it through here. So anyway, so here again, you could see it. You guys see that real subtle little drips and drabs right there, and little things right there. Then you have this nice sort of like little glow here from the reflection of the sun. Maybe a little too much, but I don't know. It's just me. Let's go ahead and just see what we can get here. Kind of move forward again. Same thing. And I think that's all I really wanted to show you guys in regards to this. This is just good reference. Check it out. It's called Hitchhikers Guide to the Galaxy. It's a really funny movie, and it's got some really cool CG in it. And they also use like a lot of practical stuff. They got these creatures done by the Jim Henson Company that are like the bureaucratic aliens that are chasing them down, and it's really just really well done because it's physically there. It's not a CG creature or something. So, yeah, I think that's about anything. Camera shake, obviously. You know, sometimes you should study the camera shake, and you get that randomness, so it's not like, you know, kind of like speeds up and slows down in frequency and amplitude. So, here we go with another kind of flare coming off the camera here. And somebody might have actually looked at this shot and not even seen the sun over here, you know, and said, hey, throw a lens flare up at the top. It'll give it a nice balance, you know, or it just gives you something to kind of look at, you know. I mean, there is obviously a practical here. We have less light that was there, but maybe they need a little bit of extra oomph. All right, so here we are in Nuke, and I discussed this again on the podcast, or the live stream, I should say, that if I kind of take a look at these, using any exponential glow, in this case AP glow, you know, if you go by the rule that is the Gloden rule, you know, you get to a point where you like this, and again, you can see I have this set to effects only, and then I plus it over to the original. So it kind of gets to the point where I like it, and then when you like it, you need to, you know, basically take your opinion and throw it out the window, and take whatever you have and dial it down by a third, or down. Basically, a third of what you have is what you want to have in the end. So I'll go ahead and bring this down like that. So that is what should be what you should have. Again, it's all subjective, so don't get too picky about it. But always remember that when you do these glows, again, AP glow or Tony's glow or exponential glow should be good. And again, just make sure effects only is on, which basically is, you know, the effect added on and then minus the original plate. So anyway, with that said, we're going to go ahead and take a look. And I mentioned in the podcast that there are different, if you buy the Video Copilot optical flares, you can get all types of those sort of like dirt, you know, textures that you can use. And these work in tandem with the actual plugin itself. But if you want to have them separate by themselves, just pull the PNGs out and just read them in. Again, they will be within the Video Copilot workflow. And if you don't want to buy the plugin, which is pretty pricey, you can go to Pexels for lens dirt textures, or you can film on your own DSLRs, like I mentioned before, and so forth. So as you can see, there's all types of goodies you can put in here that are similar to what we saw, you know, as far as little dots and dips. And you can defocus these too. You know, you can take them and add a defocus and just, you know, or any sort of like defocuser besides defocus. So anyway, let's go back to, here's the kind of the layout. I kind of simplified it from what was done in the actual live stream. Live stream goes into a little bit more detail, but it's just basic Video Copilot fire that has been reformatted to 1920 by 1080. And here I just, for the heck of it, I show you like exponential glow with the effects only off, and then I just minus it. So you minus A minus B. And then you get the glow by itself, which is the same thing if you were to come over here and turn on effects only. So you can see it's pretty much the same. So again, this has effects only off. I minus it out, and then I plus it on right here. This is probably a little bit hot, but to get those sort of like kind of break up a glow in the form of like the dirt. Because usually glows will have a general kind of like smooth blobby shape, and to break that up you can use the specific 1:4 ratio rule, which is any sort of blur system that kind of blurs it all up, and then that is going to be plus together, and then it'll be multiplied by the dirt and then plussed onto your plate. Okay, so basically we have the incoming stuff here. And this time, depending on what you want to do, you know, you can do it with the glow effects off, or the full image, which might include other things in your shot that are kind of bright. obviously, that are going to pass over this sort of dirt and then magnify all the little sort of bokeh or out of focus dirt elements. So it's not don't think of this just as like, okay, I'm just going to do anything that glows. No, you want to do like the whole plate image, even with everything added and so forth. So you can come over here and you can blur this, unless you want different controls. So you can do this at like 200. Yeah, you could do this like at 200, 400, and then 200 times 4. And then just put that in there. So just work with these ratios. So you can see each one of them, and when you plus them all together, you get this. So you can kind of see what we'll take a look at. So once those are plussed over, you do have, in this case, I use this bubbly texture. It's not really, that's what they called it, I guess. So I graded it, and anytime you want to like de-intensify this image, you can take a multiply, and that's how how subtle do you want this to be. So, if I bring it up really high, it's going to be pretty crazy. Okay, and then you could also adjust gamma too. So I just did a little bit of defocus there. Again, you can choose whatever defocus you want. And then you multiply this over this. And so now you get this cool, I don't know why it always reminds me of the Batman. I have no idea why it keeps coming to mind. But anyway, you can kind of see what's going on there. Now it's recommended that you try to make this somewhat dynamic if you can. So if there's a way of using keys to have dirt accumulate, maybe if something is coming at the camera and dust is building up into it, or if you want the dust to physically move in the shot, like it's going, it's a physical dust layer that might be blowing from left to right, you can animate this left and right with, let's say, mirror tools, the mirror options in the Nuke Survival Toolkit, and just animate from transformation from left to right. Okay, so try to get a dynamic dirt texture if you can. That means anything like build up, soul build up, or transformation. So now you have this multiplication, and over here is where I took the glow by itself mixed with the original plate, combine them together obviously, and then here we plus down this. So now if I go ahead and just play this, you can see how as bright things creep out to the edge of the frame, they start to brighten up a little bit. And again, you can come back to this grade here and adjust this. So if you want it real subtle, like we saw in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you can do stuff like that. It's real subtle, that kind of grounds it back. There are a lot of arguments from cinematographers whether or not the camera itself should be made self-aware to the audience via lens flares or dirt on the lens. If you talk to somebody like Roger Deakins, he'll tell you no. Lens flares, since the beginning of cinema, have always been an error and should not be included in a shot because they're kind of giving the audience awareness of the camera's existence. And others see it more of a stylistic type thing that really kind of helps tell the audience that they're physically seeing. It's sort of like selling CG in the fact like, oh, it must be real. I see dirt on the lens. That can't be fully CG because there's dirt on the lens. So again, that's sort of like a little thing. And again, you could swap out any one of these things. So, we can try for something a little bit more grimy and dirty here. Let's see if we can find something a little bit more contrasting to what we had. So like something like this. And you can adjust saturation levels too, color information. You can see this one's a little bit warmer. I'm sorry, cooler. And we can go ahead and put it on there. And again, this is where, I might have to take the gamma and bring it up a little bit. So now we got these subtle little goodies in here. A little over the top. Again, what I noticed in the footage that we were looking at for Hitchhiker's Guide, this junk was mostly at the bottom right or bottom left. It wasn't like center frame. I think it would drag too much attention to itself maybe. So you can possibly maybe add an ellipse and mask out the center area so that if anything comes to the corner of the frames, maybe that's where you see the dirt and the dirt only there. So again, everything is real subtle as much as you possibly can make it. And it's not always in your face, some of these fine details. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And again, look out for the podcasts, or the, keep calling podcasts, these live streams. Again, they do cover this stuff, and I'm just trying to be aware of that, let you guys know where there are other live streams that we're kind of switching to get more of an audience reaction. So see you next time.